Hi guys, welcome to Web Technologies. Let's talk about PHP user registration form. This tutorial will help you to learn how to add user registration for your website. In user registration, we collect their information and store it in the database. And later on, we're going to use this data for various purposes, like to authenticate our user with the login, to send newsletter, and so much more. Right there in this example, we're going to create a new user account using a registration form. On submitting this form, you get to validate user data in PHP before storing it into the database. So let's get started. We actually have the form, the HTML structure, as you can see right there on your screen. I'm using the localhost, which is the XAMPP or WAMP. Anyone you feel like using, you can use Apache. You can even use Ubuntu, or you can run straight on the Mac, or you can use a live server. So I have the basic form, the username, first name, last name, password. Confirm the password, the email, and the gender toggle with the accept check mark and the register button. We'll get to show you how the source code is. Going straight to Sublime Text, I have the structure this way. I have the DB controller, the index.php, and the registered users, the SQL statement to actually create the table. Back to the localhost. You're going to have the structure when you run the SQL statement. This is how you're just going to run this code. You pick up the statement here where you get to create the table. If not exist, the registered users that has the fields that I've actually mentioned earlier. So you just copy these out and you head straight down to the localhost, the PHP MyAdmin. You first of all create a database, which will be the database for this registration process. After that, you could run the SQL statement here, and that's going to actually create the table for you. So you have a table, and you get to have a structure of this nature, and the ID is going to be the primary key, and it's going to be auto increment. So once you set up your PHP MyAdmin, you could now connect the PHP code to your MySQL database. You're going to be doing that in the DB controller. This is a class that actually controls the manipulation of the database, where you get to connect to the DB, get to run the query, get to update some statement, get to insert, get to delete. You all do that right there in the DB controller. And if you notice, the DB controller has some private fields, which is predominant just to this class. So no other files or no other class can call this externally. So that's the essence of the private field here. You have the host, which is the localhost. The user, definitely if you're using XAMPP, is always the root. But if you're using a live server, you have to create a user and also a user password, and you have to add the user to the database. So I think you understand that structure. But this merely for demo purpose, and for XAMPP, there's a root that actually has all privileges and also doesn't use password. So you leave the password empty, and the database name is registered user, and you have a connection field, or let's say connection variable right there, which you'll be using to actually create the object. In the constructor, you point down to the connectDB method, and the connectDB method does what? It binds all these variables we mentioned: the host, the user, the password, and the database. You have an object of a connection. Now you get to run a query. The first query is the MySQL query, the MySQLi query. Don't forget that. And now you need to fetch the SSH arrays or the SSH results, and you pass that into an array, and you have that as a result set array. So these are all methods that you can use in course of calling this class. You have to check the number of rows. You can check the number of rows you've actually inserted into the database, calling the MySQLi query, and pointing at the connection as well. Now what's going to be the query? Probably select all or no the number of rows. Now it's going to get a row count. So that's just what that's going to be. Definitely going to be select all from the table, and now the row count will be speeded out. That's going to be an integer, definitely. You can also update the query. Probably this a helper method that's going to help you to update the DB. So that's that. And even the insert query, there's also a helper method for you to insert data into the MySQLi database. So you have that set up as well. It takes in a query parameter, so you have to set your query down to this method to execute. And the same thing goes for the delete. It's also going to do that. So we're going to be focusing more on inserting data into the MySQL database, because we're going to be using the form as you've seen, which is going to be the client side, and this is going to be the backend for us to that is going to actually manipulate the MySQL database. So let's get to look at the index.php, where we're going to add a bit of JavaScript, CSS, HTML5, and at the same time PHP to actually get us a working web app or a working website. Firstly, I'll leave out the PHP for now, but let's talk about the HTML structure and the CSS. In this HTML structure, if you can notice, we have the head, which you can see, and the body. And the body is the form tag, which follows with a table that actually structure out the form, where we get to have the username, the first name, the last name, the MP fields, also there, the password, the confirmed password, and the email address. So you have that, and also the checkbox with the end of the row, the end of the table, and the end of the form, the end of the body, and the end of the HTML tag. So that ends the HTML structure. And we have the CSS right there, we call with a style.css, where we start the body, we give the width of 16 and the font family of calibrate, and the error message as well, some padding, background, border color, and border radius around the error message. So there's going to be a kind of pop out once there's an error message or there's an error right there in the form, and the success message as well. The demo table, which is going to be the structure of the table itself. You add some styling to it, the background, the border spacing to initial, and the table layout should be auto, and line height should be 1.8 m, and also the color, which is going to actually look something like what we've seen, and the radius around the rectangle. The register button too is been styled, and the demo input box also been styled. Now the TD, which is going to be the column, also has some padding around it. So you have that set up in the CSS. Now let's get to look at the PHP that's actually going to make this dynamic. Firstly, we're going to actually do some validation on all fields. All fields are compulsory. They must be filled out. That's why you're going to use the empty keyword here to actually get the key, which is of each of this form. The first is the registered user. So if the form required field validation. Now for each of this form of this post you get, you're going to actually map out the key to its value. So you're going to actually check for the key, as I've said, and in any of this key, if there's an error, it's going to actually say all fields are required. That's just it. That's the message is going to pop out. So let's get to look at each of the validation. The password matching. If the password doesn't match the other password, that's the first password doesn't match the confirmed password, so there's going to be an error message as well. And the email validation, we're going to use the filter var of out of the box from PHP to actually validate the authentication of the email. Is it in the structured email? Or is you just type in mere words or alphabet or just numbers? So it's actually going to make us know. So if it's not, it's going to call on an invalid email address. And validation to check if the gender is selected as well, because the gender is actually a toggle. You must actually know if it's a set or not. So all fields are required for that to be done. Validation to check if terms and conditions are accepted. If the checkbox of the terms are being checked, you also have to undo that as well. Now the error message, if none, if there is no error message at all, that means it's clear, the restriction is done successfully. What it's going to do, it's going to require once the DB controller.php, which we've talked about, that houses the connection and also points down to the method to insert, to delete, and to update the MySQL database. We have an object called the DB handle, and now you're going to run the query, because definitely those methods are expecting a parameter called the query. So we're going to pass in one of those queries into a method there. And the query is going to look like this: insert into the registered users the fields, the username, the first name, the last name, password, email, gender. That's the columns you'll be inserting into with the values. Now, where are you going to get those values from? First, look at the way it's been handled. You post from the key, which is the username. That's the value will be extracted from there. You have to do some concatenation and give a comma, and you have to put some double quotes with a single one, so it's actually going to depict a string, and a post of the first name. So you just replicate what you've done with the first field. The same thing goes for the last name. Now the password, you're going to do a kind of hashing, like encrypting the password. You can use SHA-1 encrypting style, which is the fingerprint. You can also use the MD5 to actually encrypt your password, whereby you get to encrypt it. When you're calling it, you decrypt the same, because when you're logging in, the database is not going to understand mere words, so you have to actually decrypt at the same time, make login process successful. So you have the password hashed by the MD5 method. You have the user email and also the gender. So now all these fields will be inserted into the registered user. But how are you going to do that? You're going to do that with the help of the helper method right there in the DB controller, which is the insert query method. Now you have an object that points down to the DB controller. This can actually call the insert query because it's public. It could be accessed, and you pass in the query as the parameter. Now this is the result. If there is an empty result, there's going to be an error message. But if not, there's going to be a success message that you have registered successfully, and you unset the post. That you clear it out, you clear the data right there in the post. That's cool. So with that, you could understand what that's going to be. That's definitely going to actually pass those fields down to the helper method. The helper method is going to help with the help of the connection to the MySQL database, and it's going to actually insert those values into the table. Now that's set up. So cool. We have the structure of the HTML and of the PHP in Tanwingled together to form a one and robust PHP form. So right there, we're going to actually test out this form where we have the username, the first name, last name, password, confirm password, email, and gender. At this time, you would have started up your Apache, you would have started up your MySQL right there from the XAMPP control panel. You can actually see mine as well. They are all running, so this is very important if you're using a local server. And now let me click on register. Can you notice all fields are required? It's actually requiring all fields, so I have to fill out Claro Studios, or let me call Web Technologies. Web Tech. First name, Bamdele. Last name. There's an autofill that's actually required. Password, Bamdele. Confirm it. My email, just pick that. I'm a male, and I've accepted the terms and conditions of this app. Now I'm going to register. You have that. You have registered successfully. So cool. So that's a success message. And look at that depicted with the green sign. Green makes go, green makes successful, green make good. Now let's get to look at the localhost, and we browse through to actually get those files. Cool. Can you see we have the field populated, the ID 1, the username WebTech, first name Bamdele, last name Ogutuka, password hashed. Can you see it's not showed anymore, so it's hashed. So if you want to create a login, you must actually encrypt. Let's say you must convert the password to this format so that it could actually match. We get to talk about that in later tutorials. Now the email and the gender. Cool. You have a successful login process using PHP. So I'll actually be posting the source code probably to my Dropbox or some storage cloud system, so that you could actually download or pick it out from there. And I would like you to leave any comments in the comment section. So if you have actually having any problem with structuring this out or getting this done, so I'll be there to actually answer most of your queries. Thank you guys for hanging out with me throughout this tutorial, and I'll implore you to please subscribe to this channel. Have a blessed time. Bye bye for now.